Today's meeting of the Yamhill County Transit Area, this January 18th, 2018. And we will, first item on the agenda will be a consideration of approval of the minutes from the May 29th, 2014 meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved that we approve the minutes of the May 29th, 2014 meeting. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record show Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Primizic, Commissioner Sterrett all voted in the affirmative. Moving on to item number 2 on the agenda is consideration of an agreement between Silky Communications Incorporated and Yamhill County Transit Area for the equipment, installation, and annual service of a mobile radio system in the amount of $41,386.09. Is there any discussion?
Mr.
Do
Chair,
I have a motion first? I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 2, and that's the consideration of the contract with Silky Communications.
We have a motion to approve this consideration, this agreement between Silky Communications and Yamhill County. Any further discussion?
I think the only thing I'd like to add now is I've had quite an opportunity to talk to both Cynthia and our county administrator about the contract and why we're going with Silky and everything, and the answers I got were very satisfied me and everything, so I think we should go ahead and move forward with this.
Very good. So I would call for the question. All in favor of accepting this contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Let the record show Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Primizic, Commissioner Sterrett all voted in the affirmative. Item number 3, consideration of the declaration of 3 Orion buses as surplus to be donated. And this was something that was discussed in our informal session. Do I hear a motion?
I will move to approve item 3.
It has been moved that we approve the declaration of 3 Orion buses as surplus to be donated. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Let the record show that Commissioner Sterrett, Commissioner Primizic, Commissioner Olson all voted in the affirmative. We have an add-on agenda item, and that's consideration of the appointment of Kenna West to the Yamhill County Transit Advisory Committee for a 3-year term to expire on February 28th, 2021.
I'll make a motion that we approve the appointment of Kenna West to the Yamhill County Transit Advisory Committee.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the appointment of Kenna West. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion to appoint Kenna West to the Yamhill County Transit Advisory Committee for a 3-year term, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Let the record show Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Primizic, Commissioner Sterrett all voted in the affirmative. Okay, with that then, I would ask, is there any other business to be brought forward to this committee at this time?
Not from me, Mr. Chair.
Hearing none, I will adjourn this meeting of the Yamhill County Transit Area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to invite you all, or welcome you all, to the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for January 18th, 2018. And at this time, we'd like to have a flag salute. Lance, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the time we have set aside for invocation prayer. Commissioner Primizic?
Yes, today I'm very pleased and honored to have with us Mr. Rex Smith, who is a fellow Vietnam veteran, served in Chulai, which there aren't a lot of us who got to do that. And he is also has a master's in divinity, has served as a pastor, and is currently the state chaplain for the VFW, and was the 2017 VFW of the United States Chaplain of the Year. So if you would please, Ms. Smith, come forward and present our invocation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Father, we acknowledge you as God, whose great and power and wisdom we embrace. You are great and loving and kind. And Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather this day. You have given the commissioners authority to exercise leadership in Yamhill County, and we ask for wisdom and discernment for them. And as leaders, give them understanding and concern for the people and their needs. And Father, we know that you are great and wonderful and kind, and we ask your blessing on this time together. And we ask it now in Jesus' strong name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Oh,
Thank you.
Could I
Yes.
one thing I failed to mention, and I think it deserves mentioning, Ms. Smith was also presented with the Bronze Star for his service. So, and again, thank you for your service, Ms. Smith.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here, Pastor. Well, at this time, we'll move on to item A on the agenda, which is public comment. This is a 30-minute time period that is reserved for public comment on any topic other than items that are on the agenda or quasi-judicial land use matters or a topic scheduled for public hearing. Unless extended or restricted by the chair or the majority of the board, we'll limit this to 3 minutes. And we do have an intent to speak card, Mr. David Wall. Would you state your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Wall?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everybody. My name is David S. Wall. My address is P.O. Box 756, Newburgh, Oregon, 97132. Today's documents that I've given you are a matter of record in the city of Newburgh. It really speaks for themselves, but the main issue that you should look at is page number 2 starts an application process from the city of Newburgh for a grant program utilizing their transient lodging tax monies. Now, in particular, without invoking the wrath of Mr. Sadlow, this involves the Wolves and People Brewery, and they applied for a grant that I think the documents show about $110,000. The first segment of this was for $30,000. 3 neighbors, including myself, were opposed to this for a variety of reasons. Some of them are stated not in their completeness on the cover letter that is before you today, but nonetheless, the City Council received them very generously. I've also included the McClure property circuit court opinion and the McClure property appeals court decision for the purposes of completeness, because at the time I knew Mayor Andrews had prior significant dealings with the McClure real estate gambit years ago. Now, not individually, but as the city of Newburgh trying to annex that property in consideration for sewer and water and other structural improvements unknown to me at this time. The project itself failed, as the legal documents will show you. At that time, Mr. McClure requested that he was not going to be annexed into the city of Newburgh for whatever reason. He can speak for himself. But the reason I put those documents there is because a significant amount of taxpayer money from the city of Newburgh was projected into this project. It was really never accounted for. And because this grant application included the stepson of Mr. McClure, I felt it germane that this be brought forth to the public for discussion, not for just a simple little question. I found out later there was another counselor involved in that, and so I will have to ask him at a later point about his participation in this fray. With the testimony received generously by Mayor Anderson and the councilors, the City Council, for lack of a better word, I'm used to that word, voted 8-0 to, first of all, deny award and at this time, and refer it back to the Transient Lodging Committee.
Madam Chair.
The rest speaks for itself, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Appreciate your comments. At this time, we'll move on to item B, which is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve item B?
Also move.
All right, we have a motion before us to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Let the record show that Commissioners Olson, Primizich, and Starrett voted in the affirmative. Item C, we have no old business. Item D, other business, which is D1, the consideration of approval of Amendment Number 3, Board Order 16-521, to the Agreement for Inmate Health Care Services between Correct Care Solutions, LLC, and Yamhill County, retroactive to July 1st, 2017.
I would move approval.
We have a motion to approve item D1. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that Commissioners Olson, Primizich, and Starrett voted in the affirmative. At this time, we'll reopen the public hearing for item E1, which is docket C-18-17/SDR-28-17, which is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a conditional use site design review for a 12-acre solar utility facility. The appellant is Atticus Wines. LLC. This is continued from January 11th in the courthouse. At the point of staff recommendation, the record was closed for new testimony being accepted on this matter. So at this time, we'll go to Planning Director Ken Friday and start with your staff recommendation.
Yes, I do want to make a few brief comments before I give the staff recommendation. I wanted to note our previous enforcement of complaints against the Mill Creek Solar Project. When we received complaints by email most of the time, we sent those immediately on to the applicant and notified them of them. We also did site inspections on the Mill Creek Solar Project when it was warranted. For example, when we received complaints about mud on the road and a fear that a culvert was plugged, Bill Anderson from the County Road Department went out that day and addressed the issue, and we got the mud off the road that day. And he checked to make sure the culvert was not plugged. When we received complaints that the contractor was working on a Sunday, I personally went out the following Sunday to make sure that they weren't, and they were not working, at least not at 2:30 in the afternoon when I was there. And I'm just saying this because if we do receive complaints, we will respond to them, which is why the conditions of approval are important. And as the board is aware, our office tries to address concerns voiced on conditional uses with appropriate conditions. On the subject application, the Planning Commission voted 5-3 to approve this use with 19 conditions of approval, and the applicant requested modification of 4 of those. Condition number 1, the applicant requested that the on-site construction installation operations only restrict heavy machinery during the winter months. And actually, partly due to our experience with Mill Creek Solar, we recommend keeping this condition as written, that on-site construction and installation operations shall not be conducted during the winter season. Related to condition number 3, the applicant's representative requested this condition be modified to allow a civil engineer to prepare the soils reports. Since this request is in the farm zone, we recommend keeping this condition as written to have a soil scientist with agricultural expertise. On condition number 5, the applicant requested the landscaping requirement be limited to the eastern and northern property lines, and we completely agree with that. That it was a mistake in the writing of the condition, and so we've proposed language that would note that Prior to operation of the solar facility, the applicant shall install landscaping along the northern and eastern property lines. And then it goes on to say consistent with the ordinance. Lastly, the applicant objected to condition 16 and has stated in their letter of January 10th, quote, "The applicant does not accept the condition requiring a guarantee." And this is a guarantee, a bond, or some sort of a promissory note that there would be enough money to remove the solar installation at the end of its life. And the objection is actually puzzling because page 18 of the application, in the applicant's own words, he states, "As a condition of approval, Yamhill Creek Solar is willing to provide to the county a guarantee which imposes on Yamhill Creek Solar the responsibility of retiring the photovoltaic solar power generation facility." So they offered the condition, we wrote it up. I don't recall any objections at the Planning Commission, and now they want to object to this condition, so we're just recommending that you keep this condition of approval. We've done it on the other solar projects. Other counties I've contacted have similar conditions. It's allowed in the administrative rule, and I guess I strongly support that condition. In addition to the 19 placed by the Planning Commission, we recommend an additional condition that deals with the glare from the support brackets. Condition number 20, the material supporting the solar panels shall be a muted earth tone color. And that ends the staff recommendation. Are there any questions?
On the sheet just handed to me, you're showing 20, and you show the muted tone color is 19.
And that's because on number 20, it says modification of any of the above conditions. So I did move it.
Okay,
And
that's
for a
fine.
reason, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that I
Yes,
had
you're right.
20 here. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Other
I have
questions?
no questions of
You have no
staff.
questions? Okay. All right, at this time, we will then close the hearing, and we'll have a motion and deliberation, or deliberation and then a motion. Can do it either way. So let's start with a motion. Does anybody have a motion?
My motion would be to deny the application.
Okay, we have a motion to deny the application.
Clarification is that to deny the application and uphold the appeal.
Deny the application and uphold the appeal.
All right, so we have a motion to deny the application and uphold the appeal. At this time, we'll begin deliberations. Commissioner Olson?
Yes, I looked at all the information, and again, I was just amazed at the wealth of information we got, even since our meeting last week. And as I look at this, and there's some things that were really concerning me. For instance, if I can look at my notes here for a minute, Madam Chair, we heard last week the main reason, or the only reason that this was considered high-value farmland is because it fell inside the Yamhill Carlton AVA, and that was on conditional use provisions, Section B, item, I think it was 1, and I don't know the sub number. But then it goes on to say on page 4 of the staff report, it says the subject parcel is considered high-value farmland to the parcels located within the Carlton AVA. But then it goes ahead on page 6, it says the project is not located on high-value farmland soils unless it can be demonstrated that 1, non-value high farmland soils are not available on the subject tract. Number 2, siting the project on non-high-value farmland soils present on the subject tract would be significantly reduce the project's ability to operate successfully. Or, number 3, the proposed site is better suited to allow continuation of an existing commercial farm or ranching operation on the subject tract other than possible sites also located on the subject tract, including those comprised of non-value farmland. As I looked at the documentation again that was submitted, I do believe that there is a farm impact now, other than it being in the Yamhill Carlton AVA, and for that reason, I would have to uphold the appeal and deny the original application.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, did you have any
Yeah.
further comments?
No, there were a few issues that I raised during the process of the hearing, dealing with the reasoning behind placement in an area that gets a substantial number of days without rain or without sun. I think that I'm not happy with the fact that legislation came down that does not designate classifications of soil that for the placement of this. I do know, I recognize that as a legislative fix, but it still troubles me that we have, I believe this was the fifth, if I'm not mistaken, application, and that we do have pending. I think there's an overall total of 11 solar projects proposed for our county, and I don't think that this has been vetted thoroughly enough. It's a concern to me, and in working with Soil and Water Conservation, they have indicated they have some concerns about the proliferation of these projects, and I want to take a step back, and I want to make sure that we have used some sound reasoning in the development of these projects. One of the things, because of the newness, I don't think anybody can absolutely assure us that sitting out there in the rain and the atmosphere during a course of 10, 15, 20 years, the runoff from those panels and the stanchions and everything else, I don't see how it cannot have some impact on that soil, making it less suitable to farming at the end of that life. I'm not an agriculture specialist or an analyst, so I can't tell you that's the case, but nobody can tell me it's not the case either. So and this is, when you look at our surrounding area, this is wonderful farmland, and I hate to see it dotted with solar powered plants. So at this point in time, I'm not comfortable saying yes to this project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Friday, I have a question. When Commissioner Primozic referenced a legislative fix, is it not within the purview of the county to change an ordinance, to adopt an ordinance which would limit solar arrays on high-value farmland?
It is.
So that's something going forward that this board can choose to do. But at the present time, we are dealing with the ordinances and the conditions and the rules that we're currently working with.
That's correct.
So that's something we could decide to do, but currently we're dealing with a set of standards.
That's correct.
Thank you. So I have a couple of comments. The first thing that really stands out for me is how interesting it is that it's okay to approve a solar array in the West Valley, but when it impacts our friends in the wine industry, then we're going to develop a certain set of standards that are different. Now, we all know that because of the rural, the bucolic feel and the beauty of the vineyards, that this draws a lot of people to our area. But I think it's really interesting to note that we don't look at the West Valley with the same value as we do our friends in the wine industry in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. So how we can, on one hand, have previously approved a solar array in the West Valley, but now find that it's objectionable and it's of concern because it's impacting wineries, I think sends a bad message to our friends in the West Valley, and the optics of this are not good. A couple of things that I felt that I had to consider is, does it impact the ability to farm with accepted farm practices? That is always what it comes down to at this juncture. Does it impair their current use, surrounding properties' current use? These are the questions that I used to come to the conclusion that I did. Will it create unnecessary negative impacts on any of the agricultural operations? we had a comment made, we want to make sure that we have the conservation of working farms. Well, how do we conserve farmland when it isn't being used if we can't take that and keep it producing in terms of revenue until it's such time as it can then produce crops? In this particular case, we have an elderly gentleman who's been farming this land, and this has been in the family for several generations, and wants to make sure that it can still produce revenue, but he can't farm it at this juncture. So this was an option for him. I try to always look at how I would feel. I would not want to look down on a solar array. But I also know that having been faced with something similar, although not quite the same, when an 88-acre parcel across the road from me was up for sale, I loved looking out at the cows and the calves being born in the trees. It was for sale, and I chose not to buy it. So because of that, because it is not my property, I don't get to say that I don't like the fact that the cows are not there anymore, and that part of my front yard doesn't have as many trees anymore. It's not my property, and I didn't choose to buy it. And I think that's similar in this case. I think that this does comply with goal number 3, which are non-ag uses on ag land. Again, we're dealing with laws and statutes and ordinances as they apply today. It does meet the standards within the county code, which is 1202.02. So right now, my role in this matter is to look at the application and decide whether or not it meets the criteria for approval, and whether I would want a solar array or want to look at one, which I wouldn't. The fact of the matter is I can't say I don't like it, it's not pretty, so aesthetically I'm going to deny it. It has to be something that doesn't meet the criteria. So I go back to the prior approval in the West Valley, and the message that it sends to the West Valley is not as important as the Yamhill Carlton AVA. The Oregon Court of Appeals in the past has decided that visual perception of a proposed land use does not constitute the kind of an impact that's protected under the uses for EFU land. So that's already been decided. And again, I think this body is charged with determining whether or not the proposed use is allowed, whether we like it or not. I wouldn't like it, but I also know that that's not what we're being asked to do here. So I would, in my estimation, I think the only fair thing to do would be to reject the appeal and to approve the application. So at this time, if there's no further discussion, I'll call for the question.
Madam Chair, I'd like to just add one thing regarding a couple comments you made, and I can't speak for the board in front of me and what was approved in West Valley or not. Certainly, I probably would not have approved it in West Valley myself. But what I don't know to help me make that judgment is the others that we have cited. Were they on high-value farmland? Were they on Class 3 and 4 soils? Where were they located at? Because if we're talking a couple that I've driven by and I've seen, they definitely aren't Class 1 soils, and they're not Type 1 farm soils. So I can't speak for that, and I know for the West Valley, I'm sorry if it sends a negative comments to the people of West Valley, but I think West Valley is just important, and myself, I would have dealt with the same issue the way I'm dealing with this issue as I would have with West Valley. So,
And I'd like to make a comment also on the West Valley. If you recall, I was president, and I did raise several issues. There were concerns I had. Unfortunately, I went strictly by what you're saying. This is what's allowed, so this is what I have to follow. And I will take it upon myself that I have not pushed harder to get this ordinance in place that would have probably prevented this from being in front of us today, and I will take responsibility for that. However, I had serious issues on that one, and we've already seen some concerns from the present residents in that area with all of the issues that they've had and complaints that have come forward with this even before it gets up and running. And so because we didn't move forward, get this ordinance in place to limit them, I just don't want to continue to proliferate them, and I am going on record right now saying I will be working really hard to get this ordinance in place before another one of these comes before us, but I'm not going to just continue to let them go without some caution. If, in fact, we get this, we get the ordinance in place and it still meets the criteria as indicated, if this isn't class 1, 2, or 3 soil, there are ways that it falls within the new ordinance, then a new application might be present. But right now, I'm not comfortable saying yes to this.
Mr. Friday, would you comment on the question about the soil? Oh, Commissioner Olson had a question about the
class of soil.
the
I would
class of soil.
say, I can't think of any that have yet been placed on non-high value soils of the 12 acres that the county has processed. There was one that was on high value soil that was on the outskirts of the city of Sheridan, and they moved it into the urban growth boundary. And there's another one that is being proposed in the urban growth boundary of Amity, but then it's also going to have a 12-acre component that they've applied for on high value soils on the outskirts of town. I would say the reason that we're seeing these on high value soils is that's where a lot of the power lines are that they need to locate close to, and where it's developed is on farmland, and so that's why we're seeing these applications predominantly on high value soils for these solar arrays.
And I think thank you, Mr. Friday. I think this board certainly can consider that an ordinance to limit solar arrays on high-value farmland. But at this point, that's not what the ordinance says, and I think changing the rules as we go along is disingenuous, and I think it really does a disservice to those who've had solar arrays approved just in a part of the county that we might want to dismiss as not being as important. But anyway, that being said, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of accepting the appeal and denying the application, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. All those opposed, same sign. Aye. Let the record show that Commissioners Olson and Primizich voted to accept the appeal and deny the application, and Commissioner Sterrett voted to reject the appeal and approve the application. So, that being said, at this time, we will then close the public hearing, or did you want to read about finding?
I just wanted to comment that I will have the findings and the board order for your approval January 25th in 1 week, and that's because we have very short timelines available to us.
Great. All right. So we'll wait for those for next week. So, all right, at this point, are there any other announcements? All right, hearing none, then we'll close today's formal session, January 18th, 2018. Thank you all. It is 10:29.